Hello, Fraser. You're welcome to the fourth in the series of Feminist Voices, a global conversation podcast by Women Major Group during the High Level Political Forum 2023. Hello, Fraser.
I am also very happy to be here. I want to thank the Women's Major Group for giving me this chance, and I'm happy to contribute.
Okay.
Thank you, Doctor.
Okay, so the podcast series is a series that is put together by Women Major Group to get feminist voices to engage in a global conversation to ensure that women's rights and their demand is heard, and not just heard or as is put on paper by various commitments that governments have made without actioning it. So it is on this note that Women Major Group have 7 different advocacy messages for this 2023 high-level political forum. And one of such messages include what we are about to discuss today: ensure equitable recovery. Ensure equitable COVID recovery. And in ensuring equitable COVID recovery, there are questions our posers I want to ask. We want our private sector, our private business, the private sector, and government to begin to reflect on. They may not give us direct answer, but these questions should begin to guide their engagement and programming on ensuring that the recovery from COVID is equitable. What are the financing models adequate for the full recovery from COVID? What women rights organizations are challenged by increased lack of finance to achieve their goals, which also directly impact the Agenda 2030 realization. These are some of the questions we want our state and non-state actors alike to reflect on during this high-level political forum and beyond 2023. Wow. Now, to talk about this, we have with us Frezer Yehevis Tsegave. She is a co-facilitator, Women Major Group, United Nations Environment Program, UNEP, and she's also Women 7 advisor for G7 Countries Summit. Fraser, you are welcome to the fourth in the series of the podcast series. Hello, Fraser.
Thank you
Hello.
very much.
Okay. So we want to find out. We are looking at when COVID came in 2020. It was something that took the world by surprise. We were not prepared. We were not planning it. Nobody ever expected in our lifetime we experienced that kind of pandemic and that kind of shock that eroded so many gains that women groups, women movement have been able to make around the issues of gender equality. But now we are 3 years, let's say 2 years, 3 years after COVID or the pandemic. We have opened up, but we still find out that countries, people all over the world are grappling with the effect, the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic. And talking about this, well, the gains that women have made have been eroded because there's increased gender inequalities around the world. So we want to find out from you right now, how has COVID-19 pandemic exacerbated gender inequality? Hello, Fraser.
Hello. I'm
Hello,
back.
Fraser.
Yeah, I had a connection issue. Sorry.
It's, it's one of those challenges we have to face with
Right.
technology.
Exactly.
So, like
Yes.
before the network threw you out of the meeting, I was asking, how has COVID-19 pandemic exacerbated gender inequality?
Uh, the COVID pandemic has aggravated the gender inequality in so many ways. There has been different research conducted regarding that, and it showed that women and girls were the most affected by the COVID pandemic. So, according to the global study, it reveals women have been hit much harder socially and economically than men. The research conducted by the Institute of Health Metrics and Evaluation at the University of Washington, uh, that was published in Lancet, shows that women have experienced greater negative social and economic impacts than men. The greatest and most persistent gender gap was seen in employment and compensated labor, with 26% of women reported loss of work compared with 20% of men globally. And also, there has been different gender-based violence that was witnessed, uh, and related health, psychological, economic, and other issues, complicated issues were reported during pandemic for women, especially the fact that the health services have diverted their priorities into the COVID response led to gaps in addressing sexual reproductive health and family planning health services, which led into unwanted pregnancies and also aggravated spread of sexually transmitted diseases. Uh, also, we've witnessed in different countries that many women and girls were exposed to rape, but even by their relatives, and it led to a much worse complication. Also, in addition, women are responsible for taking care of their family at the household level, and the frustration and all the responsibilities that's on their shoulders, and also they have to deal with different different social different issues that were driven from social norms, led to to see the gender inequality in a such bold way, and even to just explain from the perspective of less developed countries, and the women were facing much more worst conditions, because there were conflict and there was the climate change, and there comes COVID, and it is multifaceted problems that needed multidimensional response. But yet the different sectors and the multi stakeholders all were focused on addressing or responding to the COVID pandemic than addressing issues like giving humanitarian support for both natural and disaster risks. So it was very hard for women, because they are at the forefront and they are the most vulnerable in facing these issues. So these are one of the major areas that we can pinpoint when it comes to the gender equality that was projected during the COVID pandemic.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much, Fraser. Okay, you have been able to give us the social, the economic, and environmental outlook of what the COVID-19 pandemic, how it brought about gender inequalities. Looking at these various gender inequalities that have been exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic, what, in your opinion, what are those things, what are the key actions that government at the local, subnational, and regional level should take? What are those actions that government at all levels, across all levels, from local to the highest level, to facilitate equitable recovery from COVID? What are those actions?
First off, I would like to give, like general comment on that.
Okay, okay.
If you have seen the report released by the World Economic Forum on the Global Gender Gap
Mm.
2023,
See,
it is very disappointing that it just reveals that the gender equality won't be realized for hundreds of years. So, which tells me that maybe we need a different approach to overcome that issue. we need a different approach that what we've been using, because we've been preaching, we've been campaigning, we've been advocating for gender equality, for gender mainstreaming, and to have gender issues integrated in at all levels, in all aspects. But still, we are required to anticipate that we cannot realize gender equality for hundreds of years. So I think we need to focus on coming up with a different dimension. So my response to this will be something related to this perspective, or this uh, recommendation that I have. So I think first and foremost, there should be policies, systems, and strategies designed in order to institutionalize efforts of improving gender equality in all economic, political, and social sectors. The national level programs on revitalizing or rehabilitating different impacts of from different impacts of COVID to improve well-being and long-term resilience should be introduced and developed by multi-sectors like that of government, private, media, civil society organizations. Uh, what I mean to say here is that the national level, the national government should focus on creating enabling environments for multi-sector, multi-stakeholder actors to come up on the same table and find a solution towards uh, towards facilitating equitable recovery from COVID. And of course, better yet, I believe we need to follow different strategy, like I said, in order to realize gender equality. And I believe the approach that we have been using maybe are not working well as expected. So these are reflected in different reports and findings in different research that are coming out lately. And like I said, the World Economic Forum Global Gender Gap Report 2023 is one of the examples to that. And all the actors working towards gender equality, although gender is a cross-cutting issue, should come up with new ways and approach to curb the anticipated realities in the report. Hence, different programs, projects should be launched, introduced to address the multifaceted problems caused by inequality and also to facilitate equitable recovery from COVID. So once the national programs are designed in such a way and come up with a different approach to address the gender equality, they have to downstream it to the subnational level, and they have to have a way that they should follow, I believe, a rights-based approach that, of course, boosts or promotes the enabling environment for gender equality. And also public interest prioritization should also come here. By public interest prioritization, I mean not only the general public, but also prioritizing or constructively engaging women from the planning to the implementation level, in the decision making level, because women have the power to influence the community from the household level. So we need to ensure that women are engaged, consulted with women at different level, from the grassroots to the higher level. Women should be there to voice, to address, to communicate their issues in different levels. So I think there should be programs, there should be systems to engage women constructively, and also they have to be engaged in the decision making process. And I think we need to come up with different approach where we use different mechanisms to communicate that need with the wider people, the wider community, in such a way that we use different approach to communicate like specific message. We also need to address women's issue in such a way. So
Okay.
Yeah. So
Okay.
when at regional level, I think it's important to engage in different multilateral intergovernmental platforms
Okay.
to advocate, for example, like where I am at the United Nations Environment Program. There is a civil society engagement mechanism that's called major groups and stakeholders, and it has 9 pillars, and one of the pillars is women. And in that women major group, we have different women focused civil society organizations that bring their issues and table their agendas on the platforms like the United Nations Environment Assembly and in different resolutions that engage different member states. So, as civil society organizations representing women, we make sure that women's issues are incorporated in all aspects of different frameworks that they have at the multilateral platforms. And there are different intergovernmental platforms as well. So I think creating enabling environment for civil society organizations and also community-based organization as well as women in these platforms so that they project, they voice the issues to be addressed. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you very much. You have been able to give us some background on, especially looking at the World Economic Forum 2023 Gender Gap Reports, that is making us feel for us to be able to achieve gender equality is going to take us about 100 years, meaning almost all the things we are doing, we need to really re-strategize. I think that's one thing you have strongly emphasized. Okay, have in addition to some of the suggestions you have proffered or you have given out, what is the role of private sector in financing for development that will facilitate reduction in multiple forms of discriminations that the COVID-19 pandemic exacerbated for women, girls, and gender diverse people?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think this is a very important question because the private sector has been overlooked in terms of addressing social issues like gender equality. And I truly believe that the private sector should be engaged in these processes because most of the time in our landscape, the civil society landscape, the United Nations landscape, always private sector seem to be overlooked. So I think, but the role they play is big and very significant. So I believe civil society, I mean, private sector should play a vital role, for example, in terms of workplace practice, procurement practices, investment and financing practices, as well as advocacy and community practices. What I mean by that is actually I found one publication by UN Women, and it was done in Nigeria. So
Okay.
I found it very interesting. The recommendations are very workable and very realistic. That seem to work. So I would like to share that with you. So in the workplaces, how do private sector uh, address the issue of discrimination, gender inequality. So companies should look into institute like human resources and operational policies and procedures that attract, retain, and nurture female talent. This should include robust health and childcare offerings, mentorship and leadership opportunities, flexible schedules, and zero tolerance for towards harassment. They should also, have a safeguarding policy where it strictly has a system that addresses sexual exploitation and abuse. And there should be series of actions taken on issues that are related with sexual harassment or abuse. And when it comes to procurement practices, companies should consider adapting gender responsive procurement practices across their value chains by increasing access for women owned micro enterprises, as well as small and medium sized enterprises. This includes financing and investment practices that improve access to credit for women owned businesses. And also, private sector can contribute to economic empowerment by leveraging its branding, communication, advocacy, and social community practices to shift social norms and consumer awareness and attitudes towards women economic participation. And also, private sectors should be should be encouraged to undertake their social corporate responsibilities by supporting civil society organizations and other stakeholders working on gender equality. It could be by financing those financially supporting these sectors, or by providing different resources other than finance. It could be, capacity building programs. It could be offering resource person for these organizations. It could be, sponsoring these organizations to undertake different charity or awareness creation works that are done to increase gender equality and also eradicate the discrimination.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, Fraser, time is never enough for us to engage in this discussion, but one thing I want you to know is definitely Women Major Group are not resting on their arse. They will continue to find different platforms to continue to engage, especially with this World Economic Forum Gender Gap Report of 2023. It's not looking good for us at all. Okay, but well, this is where we will say, can you give us your final word?
So my final word will be a discussion I had with a colleague. So we were discussing. It's a male, so we're like, so you guys don't like it when we talk about gender equality. Why is that? That's the question I asked. And he was like, because I don't understand. I don't understand at all. Why do you want to be equal with men? You're special on your own. And that was right, actually. And it just got me thinking, maybe when we come up with a different approach to realize gender equality, what if we think about complementary, like complementarity?
Encouraging, yes, to complement.
Exactly. So to complement means to fill the gap of one another. So it is impossible to realize development or sustainable development goals without, uh, meaningfully engaging both sexes, like, I mean, both men and women. So, how can we engage them? Who is right for what is what we should think about and talk about. And also, we women are the reasons to bring life to the world next to God. So we have to know our qualities, we have to know our capacities, and also we as women has to know that how we can, wisely do like contribute to the development of the world in so many aspects. It could be economically, politically, socially. We have that power. So I think if we use it, and if we're given the space to use it, then we can realize that development that we are aspiring for. The reason that it will need hundreds of years to realize gender equality is because we have that mentality that we're not equal. So we have to break that somehow. But to break that, we need to come up with a different approach. That's my final word, my dear.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I have my guests today have been Frezer Yehevis Tsegave. If I'm correct, I know I am. She is a co-facilitator, Women Major Group, United Nations Environmental Program UNEP, Women 7 advisor for G7 Countries Summit. Fraser, thank you very much for agreeing to be our guest on the podcast, on the Feminist Voices, a global conversation podcast series of Women Major Group during the 2023 High Level Political Forum. Thank you very much.
Thank you
Okay,
for having me. Thank you for
yes,
having me.
okay. So if you don't, if you,
Amesagnalo.
sorry?
Amesagnalo. In Amharic, it means thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you too from me to you. On behalf of Women Major Group producers of this podcast, I want to say a very big thank you for your time and everything you put through to make sure we couldn't get it live directly on Facebook, but we are going to post it on Facebook immediately after now. These are some of the technical challenges that comes with technology and COVID. And these are some of the
Yes.
fallouts. Okay, so if you will be listening to this podcast series on our Women Major Group Facebook page, please don't forget to also engage us further. If you have questions and comments, please drop them there. We will respond back to you because we'll continue to engage until we get it right. Follow all the Women Major Group social media platforms on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Women Major Group, at Women Major Group. Follow us, drop your comments, and let's discuss and move the discussion forward to ensure that women gender equality is realized earlier than 100 years. If we can realize it in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, I think it will be better for everybody. On this note, I want to say thank you for your time for this episode, and tomorrow will be another episode. I hope you keep a date with us. I remain Dr. Rachael Misan-Ruppee, the anchor of the podcast series, saying bye bye and see you again.